All right, so let's do a few more examples. Now that we have the first video done, now we know kind of the basics of how to do this. Let's do a few more examples to get a hold of it. Okay, let's do x squared minus 11x plus 10. Okay, so once again, first steps first, right? Two parentheses. X squared is in front by itself. X here, X here. Okay, now last number here, 10. So we need two numbers that multiply to 10 and add or subtract to get a negative 11, okay? So let's go through our numbers. So to multiply to get 10, we can do 10 times 1, and we can do 5 times 2, okay? So both of these equal 10. That's what we want. Now let's try adding them, okay? Now look, we have a minus in front, which means when we add or subtract these numbers, it has to equal a negative 11. But when you multiply, it has to equal a positive 10. So how does that work? How can we multiply two numbers to get a positive, but when we add or subtract them, we get a negative? Well, we have to think, what two numbers multiply to get positive? A positive, and a negative times a negative. So if you were to take these and make both of these numbers a negative here, right? When you multiply negative 10 times negative 1, you still get a positive 10, right? Same thing, a negative 5 times a negative 2 gets you a positive 10. But when we combine those, when we're doing negative 10 minus 1, right? Or even if you want to do this, you want to do a negative 10 plus a negative 1, right? When you do that, you're going to get a negative 11. So we know when we see this, a minus and a plus in the order here, our answers down here, both numbers have to be a negative. Because when you multiply two negatives, you get a positive, but when you combine two negatives, you still keep it a negative. So we know here, right, that's going to be our answer, because we want negative 11. When we multiply negative 10 and negative 1, we get a positive 10. So our answer is 10 and 1. X minus 10, X minus 1. Okay. So now if we look at our other two numbers here, negative 5 plus negative 2, just to show you, when you add those, you're going to get a negative 7. Well, we need negative 11, so that doesn't work. That's how we know this one works. This is our final answer here, X minus 10 and X minus 1. Okay, a little confusing, I know. But just remember, you need to multiply to get this last number here, and then add or subtract to get this number here. If this last number is positive, and your middle number is negative, you know down here you're going to need two negative numbers. Okay, so just keep that in mind. Let's do x squared minus x minus 56. Okay. So we know, once again, first step, parentheses, x squared is out front by itself, x, okay? So we know when we multiply, we need to get 56, a negative 56. And when we add or subtract, we need to get a negative, remember, 1. Because remember, if the letter is by itself, what's in front of it? A 1, right? So you can write that in there if you want. If you want to write it in there and put a 1, that's fine. So it is to multiply to 56, but add or subtract to negative 1. Okay, well, what numbers multiply to 56? Okay, there's a few. And sometimes when you do these, you can just take a calculator and just kind of start putting in numbers and seeing what multiplies to get this last number. If it really gets it where you don't know when you don't know what's going on, you can just say, hey, what times what equals this, and start putting in numbers and see what you get. Okay. So we know that 56 times 1, right? And honestly, we know that's not going to give us 1. So we can go ahead and we don't have to consider that. We know that 56 times 1 does not, when we add it or subtract, does not give us a 1. We know that, or we should know that at least. So what do we know also multiplies to 56? Well, let's just cut to the point, and I'll tell you. 8 times 7, right? So 8 times 7, when you do it, does equal 56. Now, it has to equal a negative 56, which means one of these numbers has to be a negative number, right? And one of them has to be a positive. So your answer has to be a positive number and a negative number. But which one? It does matter which one's positive and which one's negative. Okay? Because look, your middle number here is a negative number. So it means you have to subtract these two numbers to get a negative 1. So if we did 8 minus 7, we would get a positive 1. We need a negative 1. So if we flip it and do 7 minus 8, then we get a negative 1. So that is what we want, a negative 1. So which number is positive and which number is negative? Which goes where? So look, your 7 is positive. So that goes with a positive with a plus sign. Your 8 is negative, and that goes here. And that's your final answer. So 7 minus 8 gives us negative 1. That's why our 7 here is positive. Our 8 here is negative. Okay. Multiply positive 7, negative 8, negative 56. Do positive 7 minus 8, negative 1. That's what we want. Okay. Reverse FOIL. That's what we're doing. Okay. Sometimes it's a trial. It's trial and error, guys. It's trying to figure these things out. It's something that sometimes it takes a few tries to get. Okay. Don't get frustrated with it. Just know it just sometimes it takes a little bit to figure out what you need to do and what numbers work. Okay. Let's do x squared minus 5x plus 6. Okay. So once again, boom, 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 x here, okay? Now, take a look. We have negative 5, positive 6. So we're looking at our last number, two numbers that multiply to 6. Well, we know that we have 6 times 1, and what else multiplies to 6? 3 times 2, right? Both equal 6. So these are numbers we're going to work with to try to figure out to get 5, and not just 5, a negative 5. So now we see it again. We have to multiply to get a negative 6 to get a positive, multiply to a positive, but add or subtract to get a negative, which means our answer are going to be two negative numbers. Okay. Because you know 6 times 1 is 6, but also negative 6 times negative 1 is also a positive 6. Okay. So if we we're basically we're adding these. Okay. So negative 6 plus a negative 1, what does that give us? That gives us a negative 7, right? And that's not going to work. We need negative 5. So we try the other one, negative 3 plus a negative 2. Negative 3 and negative 2 gives us a negative 5. All right, and that's what we want. So our answer, 3 here, 2 here, the negative's already in front, and that's our final answer. Okay. Could be a little tricky, yes, but just know, it has to multiply to get this, a positive 6, has to add or subtract to get a negative 5. Okay. If you want, I can do a little chart for you. Hopefully it won't confuse you too much, but here's how I figure this stuff out. Okay. For example, if I have x squared plus, bx plus c. Okay, if I know that my two here, that I have two positives, that means my answer is going to be a positive and a positive. Okay. If I have this, x squared plus bx minus c, so if I have a plus and a minus, my answer is going to be a plus and a minus. Okay. And that's with, okay. Our next one, x squared minus bx minus c. Okay, so if I have two minus here, my answer is also going to be a plus and a minus. And finally, if we have x squared minus bx plus c, our answer is going to be a minus and a minus. Okay, so that's how it looks. Okay, two pluses, a plus and a minus in this order. It has to be in this order. Plus and then minus gives you a plus and a minus. A minus and a minus gives you a plus and a minus. A minus and then a plus here gives you two minuses. Okay, so that's how this works. That's how this sets up. Now, if you want to kind of look at this, that's how this sets up. So if you get, this one here, x squared plus whatever number x minus a number, you're going to end up with a plus and minus in your answers. And you can go ahead and write that down as, x and x, right? We can just do that with all of these. Okay, we know that's how we're going to end up with. Now we just need two numbers that multiply to our last number and add or subtract to our middle number. Okay. So if you already have this filled out here as such, you can go ahead and be like, oh, well, most of the work is done for me. I just need to pick some numbers, okay, and just see if it works when we actually do the math, okay. So that's how this works, and that's how I figured it out. Kind of a chart you can use if you want to make it a little easier on yourself, okay. So that's reverse FOIL. Okay, this is the last new thing we're going to do this year. After this, we're going to go ahead and I'm going to do a little review, okay? But this is the last thing we're going to do for the year. New thing we're going to do, okay?